Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today we'll be talking about Nosferatu. I apologize for my appearance. I'm wearing my robe. I am getting over a pretty nasty cold, so if my voice doesn't sound so great, it's because of that. But I still wanted to talk about a movie that I watched 2 days ago now. And it's a movie that I very much enjoyed. It was Robert Eggers' remake of Nosferatu. Now, I have not seen the original Nosferatu. I, of course, have seen scenes and clips from it. I think everybody has at this point. It's very iconic, one of the most iconic and important silent films ever. That was an unauthorized remake of Dracula. That's basically what Nosferatu is. It is a cheapo version of Dracula, very condensed down to the bare essentials. That's what the film is. And Robert Eggers is a filmmaker who I am pretty familiar with. I have not seen The Witch in its entirety yet, so I need to watch that movie because many people still say that that is Robert Eggers' best film, but I have seen The Lighthouse and I have seen The Northman, and I enjoyed both films immensely. I thought they were both fantastic movies that were incredibly engaging and unique and strange and but totally entertaining. And Robert Eggers is already proving himself to be one of the more recognizable directors working currently, kind of an up-and-coming director, a younger director who has a very distinct voice, very distinct visual style that is almost like, you know, when you watch a Wes Anderson movie and you're like, oh yeah, that's Wes Anderson, because his visual style is so specific and the aesthetic is so unique to that filmmaker. Robert Eggers is kind of like that. Like, you know, a Robert Eggers movie when you see one. His sense of atmosphere and visuals, pacing, storytelling, it's all very distinct, which is why I've become a fan of his. And it was also why I was very much looking forward to this movie. And I have to say, I thought it was really, really good. It's not perfect. And I don't know if I would put it above either The Lighthouse or The Northman. To be honest, I haven't seen The Lighthouse in a long time. I should probably rewatch that. But I also really like The Northman a lot. But it is still just a quality, well-made Gothic horror movie. And Gothic horror is something that I'm a big fan of. I love that particular aesthetic. One of my favorite movies within that genre is Sleepy Hollow, the Tim Burton film. And I wish that more modern horror filmmakers, or just more modern filmmakers in general, would make Gothic horror movies. Because there's not that many of them these days. And when they're done well, like Nosferatu, they're wonderful just in terms of the pure chilling atmosphere. And that's really what this movie is. It's a movie that is built around amazing atmosphere and set pieces, and the visuals in this movie are fucking incredible. The cinematography, the sound design. You know, Nosferatu, who's played by Bill Skarsgård, who gives an incredible performance. As we know from the It movies, he has a very commanding and intimidating screen presence, and Nosferatu is certainly no exception. And the story, once again, like the original movie, is essentially a retelling of Dracula. There's some different elements here and there, and the performances across the board, not just Bill Skarsgård, but obviously Nicholas Hoult. He's really, really good in this movie. He really stood out to me. Lily Rose Depp, who I'm not that familiar with, her work. I know that she's the daughter of Johnny Depp. She's also quite good in this movie. And one thing that I was kind of pleasantly surprised with while watching this movie is how the film almost feels like a little bit of like The Exorcist. There is some really genuinely unnerving possession scenes in this movie that I thought were really, really well done. And that was kind of a unique twist on this story that I haven't seen in other Dracula adaptations before. Like a full-blown demonic possession. And that's when Willem Dafoe's character, who's essentially the Van Helsing character, that's when he comes into the story and tries to figure out what's going on and tries to stop Nosferatu once and for all. We find out that Lily Rose Depp's character Ellen has had like a history of being able to have almost supernatural-like communications with elements that are outside of our world. and she attracted Nosferatu and his dark presence into her inner self. And a lot of the elements in this movie, especially the stuff that revolves around her character, can be seen as a metaphor for mental illness or depression or a darkness that lingers inside her that she needs to confront in order to set herself free from this inner darkness. And it's really a personal struggle that she's encountering, and her husband Thomas, played by Nicholas Hoult, after he has to go on this real estate deal where he meets Nosferatu, and he goes to Nosferatu's castle. Nosferatu's like fucking with him, and he's terrified, and he tries to escape the castle, and he gets out of there alive, and he realizes that Nosferatu is now going to go after Ellen. And some of these elements have been explored in other Dracula movies before, and I think that's one of the reasons why this movie has pretty decent reviews, because it's, like I said, it's really well directed. The performances are great. The movie is genuinely unnerving and well paced, atmospheric and eerie as hell, and just great visuals. I just love the look of this movie more than anything. But I have seen some reviews and some comments of people saying that this movie fell below their expectations, that they thought it was kind of lame, or they're like, one of the common criticisms I've seen is that this movie doesn't do anything that Coppola's version hasn't done already. And there are certain similarities between Eggers' version of Nosferatu and, of course, Coppola's version of Dracula, which is a movie that I very much love. But the thing is, they're both adaptations of Dracula. So the similarities are going to be... There's no way that the movies can't have similarities because they're both Dracula movies. They are different in a lot of ways. Visually, they're very different. Francis Ford Coppola's version is much more bombastic, much more over the top, and dare I say experimental, where Eggers' version is surprisingly grounded. It's a little bit more... It's certainly more focused as a narrative goes, but I still probably prefer the Coppola version just because it's just so fucking wild that I just love how insane that movie is. But there are many differences between the two movies. And so I think that's kind of an unfair criticism, that people are saying that this movie's basically the same thing as Coppola's Dracula. That's not true at all. There's no love story in Nosferatu, and in Coppola's version, the love story is at the very center of that movie, which is something that's not in the Dracula book. So right off the bat, it's completely different. Nosferatu just wants to prey on Ellen, Lily Rose Depp's character, and Ellen just wants to get rid of this inner darkness inside of herself that attracted Nosferatu to her. And so it's a possession movie, kind of. And so that's very different from most other Dracula adaptations that I've seen. On top of that, the look of Nosferatu has also gained some significant controversy as well. People hate the mustache. Honestly, I really had no problem with the way he looked. I thought he looked quite creepy. The mustache didn't really bother me. Dracula in the book has a mustache, so I think that's what Eggers wanted to do. He didn't want to just create the same looking Nosferatu that we've already seen before in the 1922 version. So he's like, well, we'll give him a little mustache and we'll make him look a little bit more like... He looks a little bit more intimidating, like just bigger. His presence is very, very unnerving, and his voice is booming, and the sound mix in this movie is incredible. It's pretty much exactly what I wanted. I expected the director of The Lighthouse to make a Dracula movie, and that's what I got. And other people apparently wanted something different. If you're not familiar with Nosferatu, then I could see you going into this movie and being like, "Oh, it's just Dracula. That's kind of boring or lame." No, that's what I wanted. That's what I got. I mean, it's what I expected to begin with. And I guess some people didn't really care for that, and they thought there was a lot of... And of course, Robert Eggers is one of those filmmakers where he already has a pretty significant cult following, and people, I guess, they're holding him to a certain standard, which I understand, but this movie fits his other movies perfectly. I mean, it's about the same quality. So the people who hate this movie, I'm curious to see if anybody watches this, my review of it. I'd like to hear their thoughts on it, because if I had one complaint about the movie, it's that it is a fairly standard Dracula adaptation. But I just like the way it executed the story. It's a simple story, and the way Eggers executes it from his particular brand of filmmaking feels unique, even if the story itself isn't that unique, which is not a deal breaker for me. I mean, it would have been nice if there were some more surprises. I guess this movie, you could criticize this film for being on the more predictable side in terms of its narrative. But because I loved the performances, because I loved the visuals, because I loved the horror elements in this movie and the way that Dracula, like, he bites on people's chest instead of their neck, which is like, I don't know, it's like more creepy to me. It's even more animalistic. Just these little subtle changes that you've never seen in any Dracula movies in this movie that I think makes it stand out. I really enjoyed it. It's certainly one of the better. I'm very picky when it comes to more modern horror movies. There's only a handful that come out every year that I'm legitimately interested in even seeing. This was one of them because I was a fan of Eggers' other films. Still got to watch The Witch, and if I do and I have some thoughts on it, I might do a video on it in the future. But I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on Nosferatu? I really liked it. It filled that void that I've been missing of a good modern Gothic horror movie that is well made, technically pretty perfect, and just really engaging from start to finish. The pacing is also really good too. I didn't feel the movie was too long or too slow. I was pretty much hooked from the very beginning of this movie. But I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on this movie? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Mention it in the comments below. What are your favorite Dracula adaptations? Feel free to mention them as well. And as always, thank you guys for watching.